2 seconds to go. Puts it up and scores at the buzzer. Oh, the Bailey is out on the field.
That's another knockdown. You know, Jim.
You believe in miracles? Yes.
You are now listening to the All Things Sport Podcast with your hosts, Daimeon Banks and Pierre Banks on Spreaker Radio. Fellas, you know what to do.
What's good? It's the All Things Sport Podcast. I'm Daimeon Banks.
And I'm Pierre Banks.
And this is episode 2, numero dos. We'd like to sincerely thank everyone for making episode 1 a success.
Thank you. You're far too kind.
We've got your feedback. It's going to do nothing but get better. Episode 1 doing numbers right now on Spreaker.com. So check out episode 1 of the All Things Sport Podcast. But right now, Pierre, you know how we get the show started off.
The All Things Sport Hot Topic.
We're still in college football season. The Final Four has been set, Pierre. Clemson at number 1, Alabama at number 2, Michigan State jumping to number 3, and Oklahoma at number 4. Pierre, what do you think about the last 4 teams that are going to be playing this season in college football, and what do you think about those seedings?
I mean, with all due respect to Mr. Stephen Curry, who is playing out of his mind right now, to, Ronda Rousey coming back from being knocked out. Shout out to the Portland Timbers, who just picked up an MLS title by knocking off the Columbus Crew. MLS, ladies and gentlemen, that is All Things Sport. A lot of things going on right now in the sporting world, college basketball, but the hot topic, the number one issue on everybody's mind nowadays is this college football playoff, man. And I like 3 of the 4 that are in the college football playoff. And I think you all know, if you heard the first podcast, Daimeon, you definitely know who I don't agree with being inside that Final Four. That Oklahoma Sooner team that have finagled their way into the top 4 is unbelievable, man. And I get the fact that they're Big 12 champions. I get the fact that they've looked good in these past few weeks playing against teams with backup quarterbacks. They've been putting up crazy numbers against teams who play absolutely no defense, and with Michigan State winning the Big Ten championship and, beating Ohio State, the number 3 ranked team at the time, Oklahoma actually lucked up and they drew Clemson in the first round instead of Alabama. And Daimeon, in my humble, that's a good draw for Oklahoma. Actually, anybody besides Alabama is a good draw for any of those teams. But in my humble, not getting Alabama in round 1 is a good draw for them.
Pierre, before we get into Big Game Bob Stoops in Norman, Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Sooners, let's start with the number 1 team, the Clemson Tigers. Dabo Swinney, there is no more Clemsoning. Clemson will be in the Final Four. They have a chance to play for the national championship. Dabo's kids had a great season. The 45-38 win over UNC in the ACC championship game. The score didn't indicate how Clemson played in that game. They pretty much, dominated from the second quarter on. UNC made a run late. Actually, controversial call late, Pierre, had a chance to get an onside kick to possibly tie that game up with a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. But what can you say? What more can you say about Deshaun Watson, Clemson's quarterback, Heisman finalist? I think that game got him in that Heisman finalist race.
He's a phenomenal player.
Running back Wayne Gallman, over 120 yards rushing in that ACC championship game. The staple of wide receivers, Scott, Peak, Leggett, came up big in that game. Clemson's defense made stops when it had to. Kind of, relaxed in the fourth quarter and allowed UNC to get back in the game. Marquise Williams made a couple of big throws to Ryan Switzer.
But you know what, though? I think that North Carolina could have been more into the game. But to be honest, the stage was just a little too big for Marquise Williams. And it was like that in game 1. And it was like that And this final game for him, the ACC championship game, and I don't know if it was because he was in front of his hometown and his family. I don't know.
I think that's exactly what it is. I don't think the stage is too big for Marquise. He's a great player, great student athlete. Playing in front of your family and friends adds a bit of pressure to you that you don't really need to put on yourself. If you look at his body of work, Marquise had a great season. His 2 off games were the first game against South Carolina, which he played at the same stadium, Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, and the ACC championship game. Wrong night to have an off game, but he did try to rally his team, made a great comeback, but came up just a little short. So you have Clemson winning the ACC championship, moving on to the Final Four. Now, number 2 seems to be your favorite. The Alabama Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, lost early to Ole Miss, made up for that loss, ran through their gauntlet of schedule, knocked off some pretty impressive teams on the way, played Florida in the SEC championship game, pretty much wore the Florida Gators down. Derrick Henry is a workhorse. I think Nick Saban is going to run Derrick Henry into the ground, averaging about 40 carries for the last 3 games of the season, man. That young man needs to drink plenty of Gatorade, leading up into this college football playoff, because Alabama's offense is Derrick Henry. They're going to be matched up with the number 3 seed, Michigan State. I think that's a pretty good matchup. I think the committee wanted to put like teams together. Alabama and Michigan State have similar styles, pro-style offenses, running games, great defenses. Clemson and Oklahoma more of a, the new age Chip Kelly type offense, run and gun, run and shoot, pistol, whatever, tomato. They run pretty much the same type of offense. I think the committee wanted to put those 2 styles together. There you have the number 1 team and the number 4 team, Clemson and Oklahoma, number 2 and 3, Alabama and Michigan State. Now, Michigan State, crazy win in the Big Ten championship over Iowa. Came down to the wire. L.J. Scott, scoring on 4th and goal to give them that 16-13 win. And hats off to Mark D'Antonio. Finally has the Michigan State Spartans, has Sparty, East Lansing's finest, in the Final Four, playing for a national championship.
Listen, man, I don't think there is enough that you and I or anyone can say about the job done in East Lansing, Michigan, man. He really turned that program around and has that program playing at the highest level year in and year out. And that's the mark of a great college football program. A lot of teams can have good years, but teams that can consistently be good year in, year out. And if you ask Urban Meyer, I'm sure he'll tell you how good of a coach he is and how good of a job he does with his Spartans. He's the only coach, if I'm recalling correctly, that has beat Urban Meyer in the Big Ten. So I don't think it could be overstated. Congratulations. Salute to that guy. He's just done a heck of a job. And I think he's giving Tom Izzo a run for his money as far as those 2 guys running for mayor whenever they retire from their current occupations.
Yeah, the Michigan State Spartans, thrilling victory in the Big Ten championship. The Iowa Hawkeyes died a slow death on that long drive, that last drive in the 4th quarter. I feel for them. Being a lifelong NC State fan, I've seen many games come down to the wire and not go our way. So I definitely feel the Iowa Hawkeyes fan base and alumni pain, but the Michigan State Spartans will represent the Big Ten in the Final Four.
Welcome to our world, Iowa Hawkeyes fans. Iowa had a great season, had a chance to win the conference and go play for it all. And then on that last drive, man, they just, they watched it slip through their fingers all the way down the field, man, until L.J. Scott big boyed his way into the end zone.
They live in that peg life.
Now, Pierre, the number 4 seed,
my favorite team,
the Oklahoma Sooners. Big Game Bob Stoops has the Sooners in the Final Four, overcoming that bad loss early in the season to the University of Texas, playing pretty good football at quarterback. They have a great 2-headed monster at running back, Joe Mixon, and one of the best names in all of sports, Samaje P-Ryan.
Samaje. I do like that name.
You know, they have a very explosive offense. Defense is better than most people think.
Nah, their defense being good is debatable. It's better than every other team in the Big 12, but that's not saying much at all.
But college football in general, with these spread offenses and the number of athletes on the offensive side of the ball as opposed to the defensive side of the ball, is going to create matchup problems for any defense regardless of who you are. You look at Clemson's defense, pretty much regarded as one of the top defenses in the country. NC State scored over 40 points on them. UNC scored 38 points on Clemson. They've given up points this season. Alabama, pretty much considered one of the top defenses in the country. They've given up points this season. So these offenses are geared towards having a lot of plays, putting up a lot of points. So you can't put too much into the points that these teams give up. Oklahoma, I think, is going to show pretty well.
I mean, you can put a lot of stock into how many points are being scored against a team. You could put a lot of stock in how many yards are being gained against a team. Alabama plays in a conference where there are tons of athletes all around, and they're third in overall defense, giving up yards, that is. And Oklahoma is ranked 30th in total yards as far as defense goes, and that's first in the Big 12.
But Pierre, those two conferences, though, you look at the Big 12, you look at TCU, Oklahoma State, you look at University, they have some great offenses in the Big 12. You got a West Virginia team that puts up points. In the SEC, you have a lot of one-dimensional teams, and pretty much you got some bad teams in the SEC. You got Kentucky, you got Vanderbilt. I don't think that Alabama played those teams, but every team in the SEC doesn't score 30 points a game.
Neither does every team in the Big 12.
Pretty much every team except for Kansas and Iowa State doesn't score points in the Big 12. I'm just pretty much fed up with you bashing Big Game Bob Stoops. Big Game Bob Stoops.
I scoff at that term.
Big Game Bob Stoops revolutionized the game of college football when he created that offense in Norman, Oklahoma. He had guys winning Heisman trophies who had no business winning that award. I mean, come on, Big Game Bob. I mean, and you're laughing because you know I'm right. Like
Jason White absolutely deserved to win the Heisman. His numbers were out of this world. He had some very good numbers
because of the genius that is Bob Stoops. He is what Pinky and the Brain was to cartoons, Bob Stoops is to college football. He is Chip Kelly's father. Chip Kelly breastfed under the teat of Bob Stoops.
Listen, man, I'm not saying that Oklahoma is not a good football team. They're a good football team. But what I'm saying is they don't belong in the conversation of being in the top 4 football programs in the country.
So if Oklahoma is not number 4, you put a 2-loss Stanford team ahead of Oklahoma? I don't think so. You can't
not
put
at all.
Yeah. So where do you go next? You go to Iowa, who's at number 6. They lost their championship game. The Big 12 doesn't have a championship game, which poses a problem. Nebraska hauled tail to the Big 10, so they don't have a championship game. They used to have the Dr. Pepper Big 12 championship. They don't have that anymore. And that pretty much means that whatever Big 12 team makes it out of that conference, they're going to have to beat TCU, Oklahoma State, or Oklahoma. Oklahoma made it through that gauntlet of games. They beat West Virginia. They beat TCU. They beat Oklahoma State. Someone has to be number 4. And in the world of sports, if you get in, you got a chance. Oklahoma's in, and they got a chance. I was reading, on the internet the other day, I can't remember what index this was, FPI, I think. Oklahoma had a 39% chance of winning the whole thing. And that's the highest chance out of the whole 4.
And that's an absolute joke, too. I mean, here's the deal. The Big 12 conference, again, they got 4 teams in the top 10 as far as total offense goes. But defensively, they ain't got a shot. The team with the best defensive numbers is the Oklahoma Sooners, and they're at 30th. Other than that, you got to go all the way down to 50-something before you see the next team. You see what I'm saying? When you go into these other conferences, when you look at the other 3 teams that are in the college football playoff, Clemson, I think their defense is ranked 13th in overall defense. Alabama, of course, 3rd. Michigan State, not as high as the others. They're actually below Oklahoma, but they're above every other Big 12 team. So when I look at teams and are they a great team, I look at both sides of the ball. I don't just look at offense. If you look at offense, every team in the Big 12 has a shot to win it. Again, they got 4 teams in the top 10, but you got to look at overall teams, and are these teams good and equipped to win championships? You play defense, you know this, man. Offense sells tickets, defense wins championships.
Pierre, I mean, normally I would agree with you on that, but Ohio State's defense wasn't the reason why they won that championship last year. It was the outstanding play of Cardell 12 gauge in the championship game, and